Thank you, Navneet, for that. I hope you're all able to see me. Every time I dial into WebEx, I'm always a bit nervous because this is the only time I use WebEx in the year.
You're
So I hope.
perfectly.
Okay, good. Are you able to maybe just to show if just one of you could raise your hands? Are you able to hear me? Okay, I can see 6 of you on 2 screens. Okay, that's great. That's great. No, it's a great pleasure. The only person I can't see yet, by the way, is Samir Bhai. So Samir Bhai, are you able to hear me? I don't know. Maybe he'll maybe one of the people in the back end can check if he can hear us. But no, I'm delighted to host all 6 of you to this panel. I think I know that all the participants of this IPA forum eagerly look forward to hearing your comments every year. And I was talking to my team, and I couldn't believe that this is the 7th year we're doing this panel. I said, next time you've got to find maybe a different moderator because I'm not sure I've got fundamentally new questions to ask, but some of them are timeless. Some of these are timeless questions, and let me start by. I'm going to cover 8 or 9 different topics. What I'll do is on the first question, I'll address to all of you, and then on the next set of topics, I'll zero in on a few of you in the interest of time. But you all are remarkable leaders in the pharmaceutical industry. That has been a source of great pride, I think, for all of us in India. The industry, as you know, is now more than $40 billion in size, headed towards almost $60 to $70 billion by 2024. Exports happening to more than 200 countries. A huge chunk of the global vaccine production happening out of India. I mean, I can keep reeling off one statistic after the other. You all know that this industry had made a real difference to India's economic and social situation. Let me ask each one of you to reflect back on your journey over the last 5-10 years, and if there are 1 or 2 achievements that you would want to highlight that you think the Indian pharmaceutical industry has had over the last 5 to 10 years that you are most proud of and you would want to share with this group. Perhaps I can start with that and we'll go around and hear everyone's views. Maybe I'll start with you, Pankaj Bhai.
Thank you, Gautam. It's a pleasure to meet the panelists again on this very important event. And it's happy to learn that consistently, when you do things consistently, you get results. So one of the first thing I'm proud about it that consistently we do things together to make sure that the industry rise above the expectation of the consumers. And I think one of the things which I'm proud about Indian industry is that industry, though we are all competitor, when it comes to patient, we are one. And we are always concerned about the patient and their safety and the efficacy of the medicine they use. And that's the reason why we have this quality forum. And it's a great thing, which is actually I'm very proud of that collectively we are able to do this on a consistent basis, 5 or 6 of us. But also all our team members are collaborating to make sure that the capability building happens within the industry, which can take industry ahead. And as we see more and more opportunities, gaps, or anything in which is wanting, we all collect together to really find out how best way we can do it. So this collective strength of the industry in terms of building capability as a nation, as a country, India, is a very important thing which I am proud of it. I would leave it other comments to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe Umang, you next.
Thanks, Gautam, and always a pleasure to be back and speaking to everyone. I think from my perspective, the 3 things, firstly, just a sense of pride that the industry did what it did during COVID. I think it's remarkable, not just for India, but outside of India as well. And I think I feel really proud about being part of this industry. But maybe specifically to the agenda that that we had started in this forum, I think there's been a huge amount of focus on systems and automation across our industry universe, with whatever we've been able to do. And I think this has been a journey different people have experienced at different points in time. I certainly think this is very important for the entire industry in our quality systems and operating systems. And the second thing that I would look at is I think the forums really helped us address and seek clarity and alignment. We just don't now look at an SOP or a stipulation of a GMP code, but we actually go back into trying to understand how to make it happen in every one of our facilities and every one of our companies. So I think we've pushed the envelope significantly further in gaining more alignment, gaining more clarity, and of course on automation.
Thank you. Thank you, Umang. Prasad?
Gautam, I of course agree with what both Pankaj Bhai and Umang said. But beyond the quality systems, operation systems, and the improvements we made in collaboration, I'm very proud that the Indian pharmaceutical industry is a very major player in the global fields, and a vast number of people around the world depend on us, on our supply chain, our quality systems, our manufacturing systems to get affordable medicines to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to get these medicines. And Umang mentioned about the COVID. We played an enormous role, the industry from India, in combating the pandemic, either vaccines or products, therapeutics, and the speed and dynamism with which the industry worked together, worked with the government, and made products available across the world is something to be really proud of. I can't think of any other industry except the IT industry, which is so well known globally as the pharmaceutical industry. And I think today, due to the collective efforts of all the industry stalwarts here on this panel, we've made this happen. And we are now recognized as a force in the world of pharmaceuticals. I'm very proud of that.
Thank you. And next, go to Nilesh.
Thanks, Gautam. I think today's world doesn't give you time to really sit back and feel proud of what you've done. But just echoing what we heard here as well. We have a reputation of being part of the solution. We bring affordable medicines of acceptable quality. To make it very stark, I think there is a very large part of the world, not just India, that would have a severe lack of access to quality healthcare if we were not around. And the COVID pandemic showed it more for India. The absolute latest medicines in weeks, if not months, at very affordable prices. Obviously, we create jobs, we create wealth. But I also feel very good about the fact that we give back wholeheartedly, into investing obviously in our companies, but also in the industry to grow, and also in society. I'm obviously biased. I was born in this industry, but truly, there is no other industry that I would rather be a part of.
Thank you. Next to you, Dilip.
Yeah, thank you, Gautam. I think all my colleagues have highlighted the important achievements of last few years. And I think since the overwhelming sentiment is that we've been an important part of the solution. And I think that's what is our approach, is that the quality forum in which we are, what you call this panel is participating today, I think is also a part of that solution, is that how we work together as a group, not only as single companies, but as a group participating in identifying the best way of doing things, so that not only us, but the entire industry benefits. Also, I think what you call use this to create a platform for having an interaction and dialogue with the regulator, build an environment of trust so that we can kind of work on solution rather than on the problem. And I think together we've done a job that all of us at some point when we retire, we will look back with pride and be happy about it. And I think I am much closer to that period than some of my younger colleagues are. But
Thank you. Thank you. Those of you us who know you, we know that you're not about to retire anytime soon. So, okay, Samir bhai, are you there? Let me check. I told you may not be on the panel anymore. I don't think he's there. Okay. So thank you for those introductory comments. I think there's a ton that has been achieved and a ton to be proud of. I want to double click a bit on the whole area of operations and quality. And if you remember, that's how this journey started about 7-8 years ago. There was a sense that we need to raise the collective industry standards on quality and in light of what's happening globally. Now, if you look at, there are many things happening. We've seen the role of digital and technology and automation and what that can do. We've seen supply chain shocks. We see what's happening now with container availability and logistics costs spiraling. Resilience and is as important as cost effectiveness in today's times. We've also seen sustainability emerging as a new force, which is on everyone's minds. And the expectations for pharma quality continue to go up. So I'd just love to hear, maybe starting with you, Pankaj and then Umang, what are the biggest trends in your mind as it relates to operations, pharma operations and quality that is top of mind for you? So maybe you, Pankaj and then Umang.
I think Umang already mentioned in his remarks earlier. I think this COVID crisis have understood us, the digital technology, much deeper understanding of digital technology is occurring. And we all have really realized that digital technology can make huge difference on whatever we do. So I think the digital adoption of a more and more technology into our manufacturing and other operation is one thing which is we as a company are trying to do as much as possible. And it's not limited to only manufacturing or quality, but across the supply chain of the company. And the other important part which we are looking at it that is the automation part. And I think that's where we are basically looking at to build a plant which could be a finished dosage form, which could be highly automated, I would say. A fully automated plant for a formulation is a dream. But I think the first step will be the maximum automated plant and then move into something which is like fully automated plant. So our goal is to build a plant which we hope to commission soon, which could be the first step towards getting into automation in finished dosage forms. And on the API front, look at how can we get into the newer technology. So a lot of focus on the newer technologies which are emerging in manufacturing of APIs. So these are the two things which we are trying to do to address that. While we are doing this, we also are looking at the way we have done in API and also in formulation. Can we do that in biosimilars and as we go forward? And that's one of the area where we are trying to now look at how and which way we can move forward quickly into getting into some of the biosimilars into the world market. So these are the few things which as an organization we are doing it. And I believe my colleagues also are doing same or similar things. I will leave it to Umang to add further.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pankaj Bhai. I kind of agree with what I think Pankaj Bhai has mentioned. I would just add, earlier I used to think that automation is largely more of what we can do in our plants. And then off late, in the last one and a half years, I think there's been a huge focus within Cipla to automate in our labs. And, when we began to speak to people, we realized that the focus and the trend is more on-time, real-time type of testing, which means you really don't even need to take a sample to a lab. You can actually test it on your online. Right, and I think that's the future which we hope can pan out in the industry, where we don't have to take everything back to the lab, and manufacturing equipment, whether it's continuous manufacturing or otherwise, can enable you to do that. But broadly, it's the same direction of automation, digitization. I think Pankaj Bhai mentioned about automatic factories, actually touchless factories. That's where we are going. But I think there's also another theme of miniaturization. A lot of our footprint of manufacturing facilities is actually very large. Whether it's our API plants or it's our formulation plants. And I think these technologies allow us to condense a lot of that into smaller and possibly more manageable units. And I think that's the other trend. I think the plants of the future will look very different, both in terms of their footprint, in terms of the people required, and in terms of the systems required to keep them up. So I think those are the two or three trends, Gautam, but largely in line with what Pankaj Bhai said.
Thank you. No, thank you. I think you both touched on the very important aspect of digitization and automation. Let me go to Prasad and Nilesh next. And I know that both of your companies have been quite assertively pursuing both of these areas, right? Both digitization and automation. When you look at benchmarking the Indian pharma industry, you find that in general, on operating practices, it is still, compared to the automotive industry, it still fares relatively poorly. And when you look at even adoption of digital technologies, if you look at, for example, the World Economic Forum has announced about 90 digital sites. There are only 3 or 4 that are pharma. There are a lot of other ones that are from other industries. I'm curious, your experience, the two of you, where do you think, what gains are you seeing? What challenges are you finding in your own journey of digitization and automation? Maybe with you, Prasad, first.
Well, we've been on this journey for a while now at Dr. Reddy's, and it's still a struggle. Of course, it's an inevitable transformation. Like when people moved from steam to electricity, it made a huge difference. If we want to automate our processes, digitalize them, and actually use the data to generate insights using various digital tools that you have, we also need the underlying processes to be highly developed. And I think this is the Achilles heel of the industry. Most of our processes were developed in the past. The understanding of processes is not deep enough. And this causes considerable losses in the manufacturing system. So first thing is to get a deeper understanding of your processes, mastering them, and then digitalizing them. Otherwise, if you digitalize or you automate an inefficient process, you'll have an inefficient computerized process. So the first thing is to fix those things, and those are really going back to the basics. And we've been on that journey for several years. Now, once you conquer that, the actual digital transformation requires some essential components. People who understand the process as well as the technology, the IT part of it. They call them, I think, business translators in industry parlance. Then you need, real capability. We are not used to understanding how algorithms work and how they generate insights, what the cause and effect is, a lot of such things. So you need deeper expertise. So you need centers of excellence in the organization which can make this come alive. And then, even management. We have to change. The leaders in the industry have to look at digital, be more agile in their thinking, reimagine those processes, and drive data-driven decisions and all of that. So this really requires reimagining your whole manufacturing system, your quality systems, your development, and all of those. And there is no choice. This is an inevitable trend. All industries are going through this. You mentioned auto. They did it much before. All the engineering industries have already done it. So all core processes have to be reimagined. They have to be digitalized. Leaders have to be digital savvy. And we must drive really good, deep process understanding, simplification, the user experience, science and common sense. All of this have to come together to make this work. So it's a huge ask. And the real challenge is finding people, talent, who are not superficial, who are deep, who will stay with the organization, who will help navigate these complex challenges. And this is really a big challenge for us in the industry, to find the people, keep them, and take over this transformation.
Thank you. I think the talent challenge is all pervasive, not just in this industry, but I think everyone is keeping up at night on that issue. Thank you. Nilesh?
Again, I think I'm going to keep echoing Prasad. The journey has not been easy. We started a little over a year and a half ago, but in many ways it feels like we've just started the journey. Firstly, if you take the as-is, our operations are mostly batch operations, too manual, not enough batches, often involving frequent changes. Secondly, analyzing data at an aggregate level is not second nature to us. So, creating a data lake, having the right kind of data analysts, a lot of other sectors actually are much ahead of us in places like this. I think there's a lot of smaller digital automation analytics stuff that we've done. But I think the vision is really about that much broader journey. I think it's absolutely essential that we traverse this journey. We cannot keep manufacturing the way we do. Our facilities have become much more modern. Our machines are obviously, leagues ahead of what they used to be. But again, everything is manually charged. We have layers and layers of supervisors and checkers. We need to simplify systems. We need to have minimum intervention. We need to have automatic data capture. And on top of that, then you can have a great set of analytics running on, optimizing everything. I think it's begun. To me, I think this is a 5-year journey. We're committed to it. I think we can absolutely set ourselves apart if we go down this path, have best-in-class quality outcomes, have the best operational efficiencies if we do this right. But I think it's going to take time. I think you have to be committed for the long haul to do this. But I don't think there is an option to not do this.
Thank you. Dilip, on this
Gautam,
topic,
Gautam, I just want to add something.
please.
But you really don't have to do everything to start seeing the benefits. Small things can also start giving us important value adds. And we've seen that, like using even the paper data, using models, simulation, understanding, using algorithms to find cause and effect and tweak the processes. And we've seen that happening. So I don't think that we have to do the wholesale everything to start seeing the benefits. We can start small, but continue relentlessly. And the small wins will really give the energy to the organization to keep moving forward.
Thank you. So many of the use cases, just capturing that and celebrating that.
Yeah.
Dilip, your reflection on what's been said, what's been your experience with your journey at Sun Pharma on this topic?
No, I think I, of course, share both the excitement as well as the concern which both Prasad and Nilesh shared. But as I see the history of the industry, I think the success of all pharma companies in the past, I think, was essentially reflected on their ability to market the product effectively in the marketplace. And that kind of drew the major attention and focus of the senior management in all the companies. The game has changed, and our success is now going to be determined by our ability to maintain a consistent high quality supply chain. So I think the journey will start with developing, I think what Prasad said, that many of our products were developed at a point of time where we didn't go into the level of depth of understanding. So I think starting with better development processes in understanding our product, improving the sigma levels of our product quality, all of this will facilitate our rapid use of technology for both data analytics and what you call digitization, or maybe the vice versa, maybe digital analytics and what you call will help us in terms of reaching higher sigma level faster. But I see no choice but to focus on this so that we consistently produce highest quality product at the most cost effective what you call processes.
Thank you. Now, thanks for bringing back, by the way, Sigma. I don't know if you recall, I think 3 or 4 years ago, I think we had talked about Six Sigma as the aspiration. I think, and that probably, I'm sure that's North Star is still there. I think one day, like just the way smartphone manufacturing has reached that level of quality standards, I think pharma will aspire to get there hopefully one day. I want to open up another chapter for discussion, and maybe Reddy, I'll start with you. This is the current, I guess everyone is talking about ESG. You know, if you look at this year's COP26 event, one of the biggest positives people talk about is not what the government was doing, but the scale and the force with which the private sector actually has come forward to make commitments in COP26. As you all know, about 85% of the world, by the way, has committed to net zero objectives. You know, the world will need to spend about $300 trillion over the next 30 years to meet that, which, by the way, is about roughly $9-10 trillion a year, roughly $3 to $4 trillion more than what it spends today. And just to give you a sense, the cost of financing this is roughly almost half of the world's corporate profits would have to be invested back if you have to achieve that kind of net zero objectives. So, and the transition is not going to be easy, particularly on poor countries, you know, like India and Indonesia and others, and it's going to be also upfront heavy investment. On the other hand, clean tech technologies are developing at a very fast pace. I'm curious, where does it fit in the life sciences CEO agenda? Maybe if you can start, right? And any element of E or S or G that you may want to expand on, and then I'll open it up to the others. Where is your mind on this topic? What is top of mind for you?
No, I think compared to many other industries which are so much more energy and heat and what you call complex processes involved, we have relatively easier what you call path to achieving net zero because say compared to steel, cement, or many other industries, I think our overall environmental impact and carbon footprint is very different. However, at the same point of time, it's important to be cognizant that in a controlled industry with limited amount of ability to invest in terms of this only for ESG related objectives where research continues to be an important demand on our resources. We have to what you call do this in a what you call smart way so that we can achieve a much higher bang for buck. And I think any processes that we have, we are now reviewing on a constant basis. We are seeing dramatic improvement even without making significant investment in new infrastructure. So I believe that we need to be what they call creative in terms of our approach to solution so that we can achieve far more. But I think all of us are on that path to success.
Thank you. Maybe if I can go to you, Prasad, next, and I think a couple of you, including I believe Dr. Reddy's is now also in the Dow Jones, I think Sustainability Index. I forget exactly what it's called, but I believe so. So I know that's top of mind for you guys. Why don't you share a bit about how you think of it? What's the journey you're on?
Gautam, actually, this is a very big topic, and it's front and center for us today. Looking at E, S, and G in multiple different perspectives. For example, gender diversity is not something we are proud of. We may be in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, but our gender diversity in India is about 12 to 13% women, which is far away from where it should be. Energy, I think we are about 20% we use renewable sources of energy in-house, in our plants. That again, there's a huge potential to go up there. There are many things that we can do using ESG as a guide. And you talked about a huge cost, but I actually think it will drive innovation. It will drive solutions. And I don't think it'll be as expensive as they make it out to be. Carbon capture technologies are, moving very fast, and I'm sure we'll find a great use for CO2 feedstocks converted to methanol, something more value added, and the technology breakthrough will really make it much easier. For our industry, I think like energy is not a big deal. The big issue is the raw materials that we use, the supply chain that we use, and we use a large number of fragmented small players supplying us key raw materials. And we need to really extend our responsibility to all the way to them, share know-how, share technology to improve the performance there. There's a lot to be done on ESG, and I really hope the industry comes together on this, just like they did on quality, and share best practices, share knowledge, share everything, expertise to drive us forward. It's a huge opportunity. I see it as a huge opportunity, not as a cost or not as a tax. In fact, I think this will be a driver of innovation in the industry going forward.
Just on that point about a huge opportunity, Prasad, do you also see it as a source of differentiation potentially? Because in some other consumer businesses, for example, we are seeing early signs that consumers are willing to even pay more for sustainable products, and employees increasingly expect to join, employers that stand for, some dimension of sustainability. Where's your mind? Do you think this will be simply cost of doing business, or do you think it could be a source of differentiation?
I don't know whether it will be a source of differentiation, because from the social impact part of the equation of ESG, we already do that. Our products save lives. They help people become healthier from illness to wellness. So that part is taken care of, I think. Whether it will be a source of differentiation, I don't know. And I really don't think that should be the motivation for us to pursue this agenda. The climate change is an existential crisis. We can't have healthy people on an unhealthy planet. So, I think this is something that it's like a moral or imperative for all of us to do. And I know our impact is less than cement and steel and all of that, but the whole system has to work together. The whole world has to work together to save the planet. So in that sense, I think the systemic change has to happen across all industries, across all activities. So, in a way, this Zoom meeting is helpful. We are not traveling and adding to the carbon footprint of this world.
Thank you. Let me open it up to the other three people, Nilesh, Umang, and Pankaj. But any dimension of either the E or S or G. One of the other things I haven't heard much about is also health equity. Maybe go ahead, Umang.
No, I think, Gautam, there are going to be choices. So firstly, I think there are two things happening. I think the greener metals, we will continue to see a huge amount of inflation in the greener metals, right? And we use a lot of that. For example, aluminium is a greener metal. We use a lot of that in our packaging, right? And I think as an industry, we have to be ready for that. It's coming, it's staring at us. I think more for companies that are specifically in the inhaler side of the world, the use of propellant gases is going to change, right? So many parts of our supply chain are going to go through challenges and opportunities in some way, right? To make our products a lot better. So I think even beyond it being an opportunity for differentiation, I think some of those supply chains are already beginning to shift. And many places we don't cause the shift. The fact that, I think what Dilip bhai mentioned about steel and about gases, the gas industry is driven by the refrigerant industry. It's actually not driven by us at all, right? And therefore we are a small portion of it. And if that industry begins to move, we have to catch up with it very significantly and move really quickly. So I think both of these are important topics, but I just think, the industry has moved significantly. I feel proud about the fact that we are now almost 45% of our power is renewable. And we've made some investments in these solar capacities. But I think it's just beyond that. Health equity is a big goal for us as well. And we've taken some goals for community and our own employees from a health index as much as we do for ESG. So I think the moment's out there. We probably are, my sense is if we don't move on to this bandwagon fast enough, we are going to be reactive rather than being proactive because the supply chains are clearly shifting right now.
Thank you. Nilesh or Pankaj, would you like to add on this topic?
Sure. Again, we started a little later than some of our peers on this panel, and going into this, I didn't know enough about it. I think it was more a learning experience first. From my part, I really used to primarily think of the E part of the ESG. What I really loved for the sector is how much of the weightage is on governance, and product quality, diversity, you talked about health equity, decision-making processes that are followed in an organization. And I think those are ones which can really lead to much better companies, much better, organizations altogether. So I think it's the start of the journey for us. Again, some of these are really long-term journeys. These are going to be good 10-year journeys for several of us on this panel. But again, I think it results in much more robust organizations which will be there much more for the long term.
Thank you.
So Gautam, if I just have to add, I don't want to add any new or repeat any of the points which are there. I agree with all of those points. The one thing which I think as industry we have to come together and start thinking is the plastic. We use a lot of plastic in our packaging, and we need to really figure out how are we going to address that issue, because plastic is going to create much more issues going forward for all the people who are consuming plastic. And this is one area where I currently do not have a solution, but I think as an industry we have to find ways to make that happen. Now, if you look at the US market, they use bottles. is much easier. We use films, and films is a really problem. So that's where the whole issue is. Now, moment you do this, the Indian consumer cannot have the product because they want to buy 2 tablets and they don't want to buy a bottle of 100. That's where the Indian consumer has a problem. So I think this is one area which is basically require deep thinking, and to do it, of course, energy is not a big issue because renewable India is blessed with sun, and I think that's why renewable investments are easier to do and get into that and basically convert your most of the energy consumption coming out of the renewable. So that becomes much easier part. But I think the other part, which is basically consumable, the raw materials, the supply chain, and some of the specialized material are going to be issue.
No, thank
And
you.
we will all are looking at how to address it.
Thank you. I think this discussion highlights that I think this industry, more than others, needs to take a more holistic view. It's not just about energy, but as we discussed, health equity, we talked about gender diversity, we talked about supply chain, we talked about governance. So, no, there's a very comprehensive agenda here. In fact, Pankaj, if I can continue with you, I remember one of your comments earlier was when I asked you about technology and automation, you talked about extending it to the biosimilars area. So new modalities, if I can maybe open up the topic of new modalities. We've seen the evolution of the industry, right? When I started serving clients, it was really all about small molecules. Then I think we have now been through the era of large molecules. And as we look at the next decade and beyond, we are looking at cell and gene therapy and mRNA technologies coming to the fore. Some of the forecasts we see is more than $60 billion in sales by 2030 for cell and gene therapy technologies, and more couple of thousand clinical trials underway, et cetera, et cetera. How do you see the evolution of these modalities, and what are the implications of that for companies like yours from an operations and capability standpoint?
So, Gautam, I think we have, when you look at innovation, which as we call it R&D, I think the industry has mastered D. We can develop product and distribute product and make sure the customers are happy. Discovering is one area which is now going to become very important for all of us, and that's what the R part is. And I'm seeing that clearly. If I take my own example, we do invest into future technologies, and I think most of my colleagues I know are also investing into future technologies. I think the way the science has developed, the way the knowledge is now available, it is possible that all of these newer area, we may not be the pioneer, but we'll be the fast to catch up on that area as well. And I think you mentioned about gene therapy or CAR T cell therapy or etc. I think some of us are already are investing or looking into that very actively. So I believe that that is what we are all prepared to do so. And there was a time when everybody was saying biological drugs are difficult to make. You cannot have easily a biosimilar. India has now almost like 30 biosimilars manufactured in India. Most of the important biosimilars which are patent expire are all produced in India now, and they are available at fraction. I know that the number of patients who are benefiting in India with that is significantly much more than when the products were not available because of high price, etc. So I think industry would continue to do this part smartly, but I'm pretty sure that we will move forward and get into innovation area as well.
Maybe Dilip, if I can go to you next. I know you've been passionate about innovation and keeping ahead and investing a lot in R&D. How do you see this? You may be on mute.
Yeah, sorry. So, no, as a industry, I think all of us have done well in generic as well as in the branded generic business. But as we've shared in the past, I think that's a relatively smaller part of the global pharma business. And it's important for us to transition to the innovative part of the business where we work towards finding solution to diseases which are currently inadequately available from currently marketed product. And I think all the companies who are kind of managed by participants on this panel have multiple efforts at different level for finding these solutions. And I look forward to a situation where a few of the products developed by these companies are available or approved globally to be marketed globally. And to me, it's not a question of if, it's only a question of when. I also expect that once a few products are successful, that will clearly create a much bigger, what you call, excitement, and also I think a desire from others to participate in the same, what you call, success. And maybe a few years down the line, we can all be discussing about transitioning to that. But your point about various technologies, and I think that's a area that continues to look at newer ways to solving problems that are not possible to be solved with current technologies or current science. So I think there is a need for all of this, and let's see how, but it's important to begin.
Thank you. Maybe Umang, if you can add to how are you looking at all these new modalities?
Part of it, Gautam, part of the way we're looking at it is I don't, like for in the generic side of the world, a lot of this was done largely by the companies themselves, right? I think if we were to look at the progress of each of our companies, most of it was developed. We, got some support, but a lot of the technologies were developed by all of us internally. I think we're now at a stage where that gap between where we want to be and where we are today has to be bridged in a faster manner. So this model for us is really about trying to collaborate with people who've already developed it. So I don't think we're going to go through a cycle where we would internalize a lot of this to begin with, like the last wave of innovation that happened, but try and leapfrog in it through some kind of a collaboration or partnership. Because these technologies are very different than what we all know. They're not the same. And the other thing is that talent availability for some of these technologies in India is also fairly limited, and that ecosystem doesn't exist today. So I think a lot of these models will be more collaboration oriented, more partnership oriented, and we're certainly looking at some of these, but it's not an easy step up to make.
Thank you. Nilesh or Prasad, would you like to add anything on this topic?
Yeah, so, first of all, I'm really glad that just like we started this quality forum 7 years ago, we started the innovation forum last year, because we have to talk about innovation as an industry. I think being great generic companies even does not give you a right to be a great innovative company in itself. And what Umang talked about the ecosystem, that you cannot emphasize enough. So my father, DBG, used to always talk about the Indian mind and how fine it is. And I absolutely agree that it is, but you do need an ecosystem to be able to innovate at a global scale as well. So I think there's two-speed, there's a two-speed model evolving. One part is where you're innovating for the world, where you need to collaborate with whoever's the best in the world to do it. And that innovation, unfortunately, may or may not happen in India, but it will be for the world, and Indian companies will be a part of that. But I think the other is, I think the opportunities to innovate in India are endless, and I think if you can, just like we do it on oral solids or everything else that we do in the pharmaceutical space, or Pankaj Bhai talked about biosimilars, I think there's an opportunity to innovate, bringing low-cost solutions. For using the best of technologies actually. So everything from what we talked here, gene therapy or CAR-T or the like, and you see companies going down that path, right? Early days, but you see companies going down that path, and I think it'll be great. I think it'll be great for India and other countries like India. But I think eventually, somewhere those two lines will merge, and you'll have even more innovation merging coming out.
Thank you. Prasad?
So, Gautam, I don't want to take a lot of time. This is a very big topic, but I'd like to add two thoughts here. One is, I think all this innovation requires clinical evidence. And this is the largest investment you'll have to make to run trials, large trials. And our ecosystem in India is not very good for clinical trials. The regulator takes forever to approve anything. And then any change you put in, it takes another long time. So unless that changes, we won't really leverage our ability to do large trials, because there are many other factors which help the industry in doing these trials at a low cost. Indian costs are very low. There's a good hospital system. There's very advanced ways to do these trials. But somewhere the regulatory system needs to be more conducive to encourage a large number of trials here. That is one thing. The other thing is our cost of creating infrastructure for biologics is significantly lower than global numbers. So I mean, I don't know the recent estimates, but a few years ago we did some benchmarking. We could create similar capacity at a third or fourth of the cost. And so biologic infrastructure creation, ability to innovate at lower cost, doing the trials, we have the elements to bring this together. All it needs is some good political will, regulatory support, and of course funding by companies like us. I think we could emerge in a unique way. China has done a wonderful job in the last decade in encouraging their companies to innovate. And if we have the political will, and I think the government has recognized the strategic importance of a strong pharmaceutical industry in India, I think there is a magic to be realized here. And, IPA, I'm glad, Nilesh, you talked about collaborating. I think you guys have to make this happen.
Nilesh, you're looking a little worried.
I like how he says, you guys. You're going to be a part of it.
Yeah.
You don't invite me, so I'm not there in your system.
We did today.
No, but I think I know that you guys are on this topic of innovation as a big agenda. I think IPA is coming together on it. I think, and as Prasad said, it's in theory a big opportunity, but also many challenges to be overcome. I wanted to go back. I think when you were reflecting on the achievements, many of you talked about COVID and what we did in the COVID era to service our patients. One of the shocks we've all seen is the supply chain shock. Right. In fact, you look at the auto industry today, and I was talking to somebody, most people are waiting 3-6 months and different parts of the world to get their product because there isn't, the semiconductor supply chain is disrupted massively, and we don't know geopolitics, and we are seeing new developments. We've seen what's happening in Russia, Ukraine. I'm curious to get your reflections on how you are building resilience in your supply chains. Right. And if you look at other industries, people are thinking of regionalization, dual sourcing, re-looking at their network architecture, using technology to get more transparency into the supply chain, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd just love to hear, and maybe I can start with you, Dilip, first, because you said supply chain resilience is going to be key. How are you building more resilience, and what is your learning from the last 2 years? I think you may be on mute, sorry.
Yeah, Gautam, I think in a way it is good to have a long question because part of the answer is already there in the question. So I think creating redundancy and creating options which something fails, then you can switch over to something equally good without disrupting your supply. I think is an important transition that all of us have learned to do. At the same point of time, I think the government in India through various PLI schemes is working towards creating a much more self-contained supply chain so that the risk of uncertainty can be minimized. I think all of this has allowed us to kind of operate efficiently during the period of COVID and continue to ensure more or less uninterrupted supply of all the key products that all the companies have been making. So I think we've made progress, but still a lot of way to go before we can be very comfortable and confident that we can't be disrupted.
Others, I'll just open up to anyone who'd like to chip in on this supply chain resilience. Anybody? I'm not going to necessarily cover everyone, but whosoever. Yeah. Nilesh, did you raise your hand?
Yes. So I think supply chains were ridiculously challenged at the time of the pandemic. And our people did a fantastic job of managing at the highest level to the most tactical level in making sure patients got the medicines that they needed. And categorically, our customers don't pay for the additional efforts that we put in. But even beyond the pandemic, like you mentioned, supply chains have just been challenged, and whether it's input material shortages, airplane shortages, even container shortages, every quarter there's a story. And the way our people have dealt with this is fantastic, but it's pure brute force in ensuring that the leaned in and made things happen. And it deserves all the credit in the world for making sure that our lights stayed on. But these kind of disruptions over and over again, they showcase the need for a deeper intervention, right? So, and guys like you are experts at talking about stuff like integrated business planning and some of the other tools that you can use. What one of my pet peeves of, I think resilience is a word that's been used a lot in the last 2 years, rightfully so. But I think associated with that has just been the agility as well. And I think as some of us grow, and certainly as at Lupin, we feel this way, that agility was lost. So when we started going down this integrated business planning way, we have people coming back and saying, after many years, it feels like we're making decisions again the way we used to. So, and I think as companies grew, plants grew, products, SKUs, I think it's just got very complicated, and we have to simplify. We have to think of it as one team, and I think tools like IBP help with that. And I think when we get into more and more of the complex generics, I think it'll be even more important to get this right, because it's not just drugs, it's drug and device combinations as well. I think we have to be cognizant that if we have to be great generic companies, we have to be agile. We have to have a supply chain that has the visibility to see things, as they go wrong, and the ability to react to it. It's about putting in the processes. I think then it'll be the tools that you can put on top of that as well. But I think again, this is a great journey for companies to get onto. I think if you're a small generic company, you get everything right, and as you grow big, there are many problems that can come up, and I think it's important to keep this in check if you want to be sustainable long term.
Thank you. Prasad, did you raise your hand?
I didn't raise my hand. But I have to say that the industry did a great job. There was no shortage of any medicine anywhere in the world, and in spite of all the challenges, I think the industry did a fantastic job of rising to the occasion, and it's commendable. It's not like the chip shortage hit all the automobile engineers. You book a car, you won't get it for 9 months now. So today, I think pharmaceutical industry didn't miss a beat. We supplied everybody.
Good. So maybe on this one, I think we can teach the auto industry a few lessons. So.
Yes.
Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, well, I want to move on. I don't know which one of you raised this topic, but I think the topic of talent, we've always talked about it, by the way, in the previous IPA panels, but today we talk about it in a context where genuinely, I think people are talking at the great resignation, or call it the great talent reshuffle. But it is incredible to see the amount of dislocation that is happening of talent, right? I think I was just looking at some data in the US. Apparently, over the last couple of months, more than 1 million people resigned on a voluntary basis, right? And there was, on the other hand, there was a substantial reduction in involuntary attrition as well. Anyhow, so there is a lot of talent that is moving around, and a lot of CEOs are worried, as to what does it take to attract, retain, and develop the talent. And some of them are quite frustrated, the amount of energy that is going into just retaining and holding on to the people. So I'm curious on this topic of talent. What are your reflections, and how are you finding it, and how are you dealing with this challenge? Who would like to start?
I'll go first, if that's fine.
Please.
So I think there are two aspects to what we're seeing. Of course, one is the pent-up thing of the last 2 to 3 years where mobility was valued. You know, we've come from a world where mobility was valued to a world where possibly mobility is not as valued. Right? People want to make choices where they want to be. Is it close to their families? Is it close otherwise? That's one. Second, I think the way the new generation of people look at their work and their life is very different. And I think while COVID's accentuated that, the way millennials make decisions is very, very different than how all of us, when we were growing up, made our own decisions. So I think part of the reason is if we were to attract more talent, one is to be a little bit more friendly to how the whole millennial decision making and psyche works, right? And I think that psyche is fundamentally very different than at least the psyche that all of us grew up with. That's one. The second is, look, I think we have to keep offering talent opportunities because the PE environment in India is so active today that you know these opportunities are available at much more and higher wealth creation potential for each individual, right? And I think some people will make that choice, but some people will clearly value you know their current transition and capability. So what we're trying to do is trying to see how careers can evolve within you know at least at Cipla. We're trying to see how we can offset, you know, how we can compensate this with wealth creation, not at the same way as we can others, and also looking at capability building. But broader term, Gautam, 10 years later, the current millennials are going to be the workforce. They're going to be people who will probably be, you know, in level L-1s or L-2s for a lot of people who are sitting on a lot of us on the call today. And I think we have to get our organizations ready to offer flexibility to how they think, how they work. And it could be in our labs, it could be in our plants, and it could be in the field. And I think that's a big seismic shift that we all need to embrace.
Thank you. Who else would like to share a perspective on this?
So Gautam, I just would add here to this is that we have this real challenge, even in India today, that because of the industry growing rapidly, newer and newer player coming in, it's becoming like a musical chair for at least some of the jobs. And it is becoming very important for us to really think about how are we going to manage it. It's okay and good. I'm happy that people get good opportunities and they move forward and develop their career. But I think it's going to be important as an organization what we do internally. And I think developing talent is going to become more important going forward. And I think organization and particularly the HR function would have to focus much more on developing talent within the organization and give opportunity for people within the organization. Some of the people are still going to remain there in spite of there is so much of lure around. And these are the people, if you develop,
Vijay.
it's possible that they will become a long-term player for you. So I think this is going to be very important for us. And I think we should actually figure out that how do we really do the coaching for these people? How do we coaches who can coach them to take higher responsibility? Can you hire consultants and from abroad to come and train them to get some of the skills which we might be missing, find those gaps and basically create internal pipeline. I think that's the only way ultimately we can resolve this issue. That's what I think. And I think that's what we as an organization are trying to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Pankaj. Any other comments?
So I would just like to add to what Umang and Pankaj said. I think we should look outside the industry and get talent from other sectors also. You know, Umang is a prime example. He came from Pepsi, if I remember, and he's now a Pharma CEO. Fantastic. Very proud of him. So in that sense, if we take risks with talent, it'll benefit the entire ecosystem. Our manufacturing head also came from a FMCG. So it's possible to get talent from other sources, just not the pharma industry, and creating this incestuous movement of people from one company to the other can be, thought a bit differently, and we can take chances with talent from other areas, which are other sectors, And it's been a good experience for us doing that. Of course, some jobs really require specialized skills and that you can't experiment. Many of the leadership roles, you can take some chances.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. I think this is clearly, this is, as somebody was telling me, it's not about to go away. I think with the amount of liquidity going around in the market and from our private capital going around, to your point, Umang, there will be unusual kinds of opportunities for a lot of people. And the pressure, I think, is not going to go away anytime immediately. I do have one more question, but before I go there, that's my last question. I did want to open it up to the audience. What I don't know is exactly how to get questions. So let me check. I don't know if anybody on the moderator, anybody knows how we can get questions.
So, Mr. Kumra, no, we don't have question feeds, but
You don't have
questions if we are getting it on other.
Okay, if you have any, you please raise it. I thought there was some time built on the agenda for questions, but if there isn't, so can I go ahead and ask my last question and then we try and close with that, or do you want to?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, let me thank you with that. Okay, let me ask you then the closing question. So let's go back to, I think, where this whole journey started, right? We started this whole forum with a focus on quality, and I want to, in a sense, come back to that topic for a minute. Right, you look at, I think, some of the data my team shared last year. Apparently, the Indian inspections, I think we had about 83% acceptable outcomes, 17% of the plants perhaps not acceptable outcomes. I'm sure this is just one metric, but you look at US and Europe, I think they are doing better. So we can look at it as glass half full or glass half empty. I leave it to you, but now that you've been in the journey for the last 5-6 years, how are you now crystallizing your vision and aspiration on the dimension of quality for the future? What do you think should be the vision that we need to be working towards? And I'm going to ask all of you to comment on that. And you can also use this to add anything else on the IPA forum that you want to add, because we're going to try and close on that. So what's your vision and on quality, and any other advice you have for the IPA forum as we evolve it further? So maybe I'll start with you, Prasad.
Firstly, I think the forum has been a very big value add for the entire industry. It has raised the bar for all of us in terms of expertise, in terms of standards, in terms of talent and sharing of best practices. So I think this forum has made a huge impact for the entire industry and for the country. So I think it should continue pushing the bar, increasing the standards, maybe extend into other relevant topics such as digitization, other areas which could improve the competitiveness of the companies. And beyond quality, I think we can look at innovation, and we discussed this earlier. If we can create a similar kind of journey for companies which want to innovate and improve the ecosystem for innovation, regulatory frameworks, clinical trials, the whole enabling system for innovation, that would be great. And finally, I think ESG also would be a great platform to bring companies together to learn from each other and drive our performance up on all the three elements of ESG.
Thank you. Maybe Umang, to you next.
I would echo, I think, all the themes that Prasad mentioned. I think innovation is important, digital certainly. So I would put those two. Of course, ESG, I think everyone's, would have different goals. But if you can do that, I think this would be a great extension of all of us coming together.
And on the vision for quality, what would you, any particular thought you want to share?
So, yeah, I think, Gautam, as when we started this journey, there are various metrics that all of us have looked at very differently within our organizations. And I think the first is, I think Dilip Bhai mentioned this some time back, that, if your product development is right, that sets the tone for a lot of the quality that we need. So while we were addressing a lot of our quality in manufacturing and in our labs, I think it's important to start from there, because that lays the strong foundation. And then many times I've also found that, we sometimes have a very incremental approach. We modify a plant, and then while that plant modification helps you for the first 1 year or 2 years, it suddenly begins to create problems for you 3 years later, because, many things come up which were not probably anticipated. So embedding some of this quality into our engineering practices, into how we design our plants, into our development processes, I think would be very good extensions of the Forum for Quality.
Good, thank you. Maybe Nilesh, to you next. Again, my two-part question: quality and overall IP.
Yeah. So firstly, for the industry, right? Again, I think 7 years is a great time to reflect and see, are we adding value in what we're doing? If I look back, quality and compliance used to be a very company-specific issue, and kind of mean, kind of bad to say this, but I think individuals and companies possibly took joy, a little bit of schadenfreude in terms of enjoying somebody else's misery at that point of time. I think that has gone through a complete sea change, and I don't think this forum can take all the credit in the world for that, but I think they can take a good amount of credit for that. I don't think anybody in India feels happy if another company gets a set of 483s or a warning letter. I think we all realize that we together shape whatever is the quality and culture of what comes out of India, and I think at that level we work for a collective goal. So I was fortunate to get this opportunity in IPA to start off the quality forum. Obviously, amazingly supported by the rest of the team, but I think the level of information sharing that has happened in this collective way, whether it's an SOP or a guidance, that never ever happened before. And I think it's a given now. I don't think anybody's going to shy away from sharing an SOP on certain practices that we might do, or a guidance that we have, or a view that we have based on a regulatory body's guidance. I think we started questioning a couple of years ago on outcomes. And I think we set, again, thanks to you guys, we set up this framework of metrics between the companies. I think it's extremely powerful. We just need to use this, and we need to keep getting better and better. Pet peeve, we always talk about Six Sigma. I was the one who put my foot in my mouth when I talked about it. I did not know about Six Sigma at that part of time, but it sparked a journey, right? And in that journey, there are several products that we have at a Six Sigma level. There are several, all our products we benchmark on where they are on that Six Sigma level. These kind of things would not have happened unless we had gotten out to talking about quality and compliance out in the open. I think my vision for the sector, I think this sector is known as...
Should we try and close, or do you want to take any questions?
Oh, we're back.
Yeah. We are back. I think we are... Umang, we can't see you. I think your screen is off.
I think we're missing Dilip.
I'm trying to switch it back on, but it says sending videos disabled. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know this one. No.
Umang, you have to reconnect. It happened to me also, and I had to reconnect 2-3 times.
Okay, let me try it. I'll try and reconnect.
All right, yeah, I'm still there. I was trying to dial in from the other iPad. I think you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Since there's a bunch of listeners who are on, maybe we continue to Pankaj Bhai and Prasad. I'm sure.
Okay.
I did my bit, I think.
Yeah. Did you want to just... okay, let me just check. I don't know if the audience is on. Is there a way to check that? Do we know if they're on?
It should be on.
Because he said the broadcast hasn't started. Navneet, can you confirm if the broadcast has started, or are we ready to start?
Yes, as we're on. I think it's
we're on.
Chat.
Okay. So before we lose the connection, I think my suggestion would be, in the interest of time, we keep it to the last set of comments from the CEO. So over to you, Nilesh. I think, Nilesh, I know you're mostly done, but anything you want to just recap since you got...
Just my last point, right? And I was literally at it. I think we're known to be the pharmacy for the world. I think we're very fortunate to have that position. In the next 5 years, I would love for us to be known as having best-in-class quality in the world as well. I don't think we're there. This forum works towards something like that. And I do believe that we can do it. I think with a forum such as this, we have regulators on board. We have a dialogue, which we never had 7 years ago. I think it is individual companies talking to individual regulatory bodies around the world. I think we have a dialogue. We have a position, a place. We must use it. And I think we do have to drive it to be best-in-class quality. And I think we can do it.
Thank you, Nilesh. That's very inspiring. Thank you for that. And maybe unless Dilip Bhai comes, I think we'll try and close with Pankaj Bhai. Pankaj, again, my question was twofold: quality aspiration and IPO forum next. You are on mute.
Muted.
Yeah. So Gautam, a lot of things have been said, and we all echo the same thing. So I don't want to repeat all that, but I think what is going to be important for us is how do we expand the quality forum? So one of the area of concern for me would be that though we are trying to involve as much industry as possible, can we make this group bigger and bigger so that more and more people start becoming participating into that more actively? They do attend the meetings, they do look at the reports we generate, but they don't actually actively participate. Moment they start interacting, there will be your thinking. And I don't believe that these 6 companies only know everything. There are a lot many other companies outside this also know a lot of new things. And it might be helpful for each other to learn from each other. So I think expanding the group and in the process, the of creating India quality at the top, as Nilesh, I think is what can be achieved when we become more inclusive with more number of people. So that's the first thing which comes to my mind. And ultimately, as I was saying in the beginning, we are all here for the patients. And I think that how do we imbibe into our people's mind is going to be important. That all of them are producing for the patient. That patient could be their brother, sister, mother, father, or somebody else. But it's very important for them to actually practice through that culture, which ultimately will become a winner. So that's what I want to add. Gautam, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I think we've, let me try and bring on that note this panel discussion to a close. So I want to just close by firstly thanking all of you for, I think, a very insightful set of comments. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I think if you look at this last hour, I think we've touched on topics that range from supply chain resilience to ESG to new modalities to achievements in the industry to talent. And I'm sure we could have gone on and on, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time here. I think the thing that I take away every time I listen to all of you together on this kind of a panel, you know, I remember there was a book more than a decade ago that I read. It was called Collaborating to Compete. You know, collaborating to compete, and I think you all truly represent that. I think the ambition, the learning mindset, and the just to keep expanding the agenda, I think is very inspiring for the industry, and I hope more and more participants will join in this journey as we go forward. So with that, let me thank you all once again and wish everybody a good evening and good luck.
Thank you, and thank you, Gautam.